Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the last session of the day. So I'm glad you stayed until the last session of the day, because it's the best session of the day, of course. Very great that you're all here, first of all. We are going to talk about European legislative matters. So the reason why it's called that way, with a very interesting panel. Let me introduce them first. Natascha Geraedts from Eversheds, Thomas Volder from the Danish data center industry, and Garry Connolly from Host in Ireland, the industry association. My name is Stijn. I'm managing director of the DDA. The most important thing, I think, that we are, what we are in the industry now, in the situation that we are, is sort of like, how can we grow in these challenging times? In these times where data centers are seen as negative, but how do we keep the momentum going? Our industry is depending on it, on the growth, but is that growth sustainable? How can we go on? I think that is the main theme that we discussed. We want to bring forward and have a discussion about it. If you have any questions during the panel, please feel free to raise your hand and ask it. Koen will be here with a microphone, so we will come to you and let's have an open discussion. First, to start with, where are we with that momentum? And Garry, can you elaborate a little bit on that, sort of like from your perspective?
Sure. Firstly, it's St. Patrick's Week this week, so I give you a little shamrock chocolates.
Thank you so much.
Just for you.
I want to share with the audience later.
Yeah. Don't share with those. They're all the Irish gang. They brought their own. So I think ultimately, where are we in the planet right now? It's because we can get too narrow and too deep too early in these discussions. And to me, where we are is two of the mega trends right now are digitalization and decarbonization. They're probably the two, if you look at the IPCC report, they're the two things that come out. We need to decarbonize the planet and we need to digitalize the planet. And we can't do the decarbonization bit without the digitalization. That's the first time anyone has said anything like that in this event today. And I think that's part of the challenge we have, Stijn, is we haven't found our voice as an industry as to why you have data centers. A lot of really intelligent scientific people talk an awful lot about what they are, how they do it, but we don't communicate the why. And it's quite simple to me. There's two words in data centers: data and center. Sorry. Lex. I've always wanted to do that to Lex. All my life, I wanted to do that to Lex. Sorry.
I think we have a still for the video now.
Sorry. So we haven't found the voice yet. And yet, when we're talking to policymakers, we're talking to journalists and stuff, we talk about PUE as if it matters. If I'm buying a car, I actually don't care about the spark plug, genuinely. I just, trust me, I have an electric car now, so I don't even have one. So ultimately, we need to, and that's why I bring this with me everywhere I go, we need to have a floppy disk moment, right? If I show that to people of a certain age, they know exactly what it does. It's a floppy disk that holds data. I put it in, I take it out. I had Microsoft Word, I had Microsoft WordStar, whatever. And I immediately knew. So if I can get somebody to understand what that is, and then I say a data center is just that, all grown up. And suddenly now we're talking about something both parties understand. So I think we need to change our voice slightly to use different words, use more of the data words, and then the center will find its way. And those two pillars decarbonisation, that's change, a lot of change. And people don't react so well to change, always.
Yeah. Thomas, where are we at that moment? Or do you agree? And where do you see, for instance, from Denmark perspective?
Well, I believe that we are in a very, very good place in the data centers. It's past pandemic, and during the pandemic, we learned that you can do all these remote meetings. You can save on travel, you can save on cars, you can save on a lot of stuff. But I very, very much agree with Garry. It's the perception, because you see young people, they don't fly, they don't eat meat, but you know, when they protest against the data center, they will stream it directly on the social media platform. That's the issue, because we have to explain to the broader audience that we actually enable the possibility to have a digital society and release so many opportunities. And we always felt back in the data center, PUE and the technical stuff. And for us, it's interesting, but I think for the majority of the users, they couldn't care less.
For us, it's not that interesting.
But we're in a good place. I think we also have to acknowledge that the industry came an extremely long way. There are so much efficiency done in data center. There are so many innovations. There are so much will to do things. Then we have the next level of technological developments that will come. So we have a lot of solutions that will make it even better if we go from PUE to scope 3 and look at the broader picture. So we have a lot of opportunities. But I think we came a long way. And if you move some of all the, let's say, the dirty on-prem data centers into to the more clean data centers, you know, that can release even more. And then we can, you know, digitalize the society. Many countries, you know, you even have to sit in the car and drive to the municipality to have a signature and a stamp. You ask about Denmark, we have extremely digitalized. So everything is done via the computer, and that saves a lot of emissions. Yeah. Yes, it might be difficult for the older generation to live into that, but I think we are at a stage now where it's the normal to do things digital. Yeah. So we just have to
define an older generation.
I'm not going to do that. No.
Yeah. And Natascha, from the momentum perspective, where do you see that we are now? If you see what's happening, also from your perspective.
Yeah. I'm just a simple lawyer, of course, and the necessity for digitalization is there, and the growth for more data centers is imminent and evident. At the same time, what we see in the Netherlands is that it all started in 2019, where two of our main municipalities, Amsterdam and Haarlemmermeer, issued building stops for data centers, as if it were nothing, all of a sudden out of the blue. These building stops evolved around three aspects: landscape, energy, and water usage. Subsequently, the province of North Holland, one of the main provinces in the Netherlands, established as first province a data center policy. So apparently a data center policy was needed. We have around, I believe 57 data centers in the province of North Holland. And again, those three aspects, water usage, energy, and fit in the landscape and use of land, have become very important. And I think that, so those are already two levels, municipal level and provincial level, where we've seen since 2019 a stricter regulatory framework for data centers. At the same time, the need and the growth for data centers is rising. So that would seem contradictory. But last but not least, on the national level, and I remember last year, one of the last questions was, do you think that our national government in the Netherlands should be more directing the requirements and conditions for establishing of data centers? And almost nobody in the audience was pro the national government taking control. And this is exactly what happened only a month ago, 16th of February, where the national government said, we're going to step in, no more hyperscale data centers in the entire country for at least 9 months before we issue new legislation. So from a lawyer's perspective, a little bit negative, because the need is there. At the same time, it all seems to go towards preventing data centers to establish.
Yeah.
Which is of course not the case, but I mean the perception is different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you look at, of course, in Ireland, you see also a lot of turmoil in the data center market. I think if you look at the percentage of energy use, it's even maybe the highest in Europe. But still, there is a tremendous momentum. Is that momentum now stopping, or is
Depends what day it is. And this is the problem that we have, is that there's inconsistencies. And if any, to put some context into the Irish data center industry, I had a floppy disk in my pocket, sort of as a joke, but not really. We were the largest exporter of software on floppy disks in 2000. So now the evolution of the floppy to the data center is its growth. Now, the reason I'm going back that far was when we were the largest exporter of software in the world, we nearly had another national day of celebration because it was big boxes and 40-foot containers, and they were going out on, they were tangible, physical. It's just that, again, going back to the physicality of this shed that doesn't have even a mural on it. It just looks like a box, and it has a bad vibe. However, more and more now, what we're finding is that it's science, it's physics. That's our challenge. So not all geographic locations have moratoriums or cessations for the same reason. You in the Netherlands, I fly in and it's very dense. You obviously have challenges maybe on space. We don't. We just, at this moment in time, have run out of electrons. Quite simple. And we can talk about it what we want. We've run out of electrons. We've 10 gigawatts more coming on from offshore. We've a gigawatt of data centers. We've another gigawatt in development. And effectively, we could start throwing mud and say air grid should have, could have, would have, but it's not going to get us anywhere. However, now what's happening, and this may happen in the Netherlands also, due to the clarity on we won't be giving you any more grid connections. None of this flip-flopping. Well, you bring a bit and we'll give you a bit. Since the certainty, now the data center operators are becoming so creative with demand response. They're actually now becoming a prosumer. It's now coming into the word prosumer, where they're taking and then they're on standby. So all those little things that'll happen in the background will, over time, I believe, change the perception. But there's a lot of fear in the world right now, isn't there? Just fundamental fear. And this is just that one other thing that, with fear and with change, you either embrace it, you smack it in the nose, or you run away from it. Yeah. And we're also finding, and I was just talking to some of the guys downstairs, the refresh cycle is starting now. Probably the same in the Netherlands, where the centers that were built 10, 15 years ago, the refresh cycle is coming back. They're more efficient. They don't need a bigger MIC of electricity to give 2 or 3 times more out IT load. So that's happening more and more. But it's a changeable market. All the grids, every grid in Europe is becoming smart. They have a challenge in their own right, irrespective of data centers. So this new-ish technology box, to your point, it's just taking them out of people's offices and putting them into one central location. It'll evolve, but we need to change the words we use with the people and with the journalists. Yeah. Talk more about the data, less the center.
When we had sort of like the discussion in the Netherlands about, for instance, the Facebook project, and there were a lot of interviews with Danish sort of like municipalities and sort of like government, and they said, we just welcome the data center. So if you hear all these stories about the Netherlands and Ireland, Thomas, what is your, is it already, is there a change already in Denmark, or is it basically still open for business, or do you see also that it's becoming more and more a challenge to keep the momentum?
We don't see the challenge yet. Actually, there is a positive public opinion on data center. So far, I'm not naive. It can come very, very soon.
And is there a reason why it is?
Yeah, but it's if you take around the Greater Copenhagen, there is some development on the colo sites. Microsoft are building 3 data centers there. So around Copenhagen, it's going to be difficult to find, let's say, the place around there. But if you look in Jutland, which is there is a lot of space. There is capacity on the power grid. There is fiber connection that has been well established. We have some DC connections to Netherlands, 700 megawatt DC. We have a 1400 megawatt DC connection built to the UK. So there are some developments that where it makes sense to invest there. And from the local and the municipality and the locals, it's explained as an investment. And then you get back to, okay, how many people are in the data center investment? But the reality is that if they invest during the construction phase, during the pre-construction phase, it's a lot of people. And some of the people might stay around. We have the Luleå case where Facebook built many years ago. They have a city that has been decreasing in population, where the young kids move to Stockholm and never get home until maybe at Christmas. Now they go back because they have universities, so they have development. So in the western part of Denmark, it's kind of, we tell this story that this could be the new digital hub. It could create a lot of possibilities in the construction phase. And then we also, when a lot of the data centers being built in Denmark are built by foreign companies, but the percentage of Danish content is growing every time we build a data center. So we see it because we have a very small country, and we don't have space for that many data centers. But we have companies, we have a lot of people who see this as the next. Maybe the next wind adventure that the Danes can be exporting some of the solutions.
And who is explaining the story? Who is taking the lead in explaining that to the people, the local people? Is that the data center itself? Is that the municipality? Or who is taking on that role?
The municipality are quite good in this location that they have dedicated for data centers. So they have even bought the ground, made all the, let's say, the preparation work done. So they sell the good story. Then it's our data center industry. We speak whenever we have the possibility to speak about it. But it's every time I speak to somebody, there is somebody in the corner saying that, what about green energy? What about, So we also get like some of the bad comments. I think we just have to put it into a broader picture, because nobody wants to give up on digital development. But so far it has not been a problem. Yeah. But with the energy prices, with the, with what we see other places in Europe, of course we don't want to be, the place for every data center, supporting Europe. But we have space for more data centers, and the public opinion is still not bad. But we have to be very careful to not do it. And by the way, we don't have any mining data centers. That might be a different story, because that's not always well received.
Do you have competition on your grid? Do you have more than one grid supplier?
We have one grid supplier.
Just one?
Yeah, we have.
Just one,
yeah.
TSO?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Your microphone.
And that's also, obviously there's a lot of planning, and to, we will also have a challenge on power at some stage, because it takes many years to develop this.
You've an oversupply. You're an exporter of electrons at the moment, right?
Well, we haven't in some parts of Denmark we have an oversupply of energy. Yes.
Yeah. So
but it's.
You don't have the pinch point that the rest of us have.
Yeah, that's a different story.
It's a difference. It's not the same. Like in Singapore, it's the same. They've got.
But
space.
it surprises me, because Denmark's also a small country like the Netherlands, and what you were saying, the density of our local is a national challenge. Is the density of the country. We have so many activities competing against each other: housing, farming, industry, in urban area. Well, not only in rural areas, but also in urban areas, for existing and enlarging existing data centers.
But if you look at where we are now with the momentum, what we see in the different countries, how can we change the momentum, or how can we make sure that we don't get in a momentum or in Denmark. But what do you see, Natascha?
Well, what I think is really important, and I think we've been saying this for many years now, unfortunately, I would say. So what are the lessons learned? A couple, but not all of them have been successful, is that it's now the time, when you issue a building stop or moratorium, it means that you are preparing new legislation. Now is the time to feedback and provide input on the new legislation. And a lot of it is, unfortunately, ignorance. When we discuss and collaborate with authorities often on a municipal and provincial level, and also on a national level. And what we see is a lot of people who issue the permits don't exactly know what a data center does. So communication is key. And unfortunately, I don't think that the past 1.5 or 2 years have helped because we were not able to get people in to the data centers, provide tours, or sit virtually with each other in a meeting and just show them what is a data, what goes in, what goes out, and what are already the energy efficiency measures, for instance, that are taken. So going back to your question, Stijn, is providing as much input as possible. Now is the time to do it, and also be realistic. Because one of the required conditions is, for instance, in the policies, is a reuse of waste heat. That's a really great news and great stuff, but it's not realistic for every data center. So be open about it and tell them why it's not possible. Another example is the PUE, which is a condition in two municipal policies in Amsterdam, Haarlem and Meer, but also in the provincial policy, needs to be below 1.2. If it's not the right tool, PUE, now is the time to discuss it with the national government and the provincial authorities. Why you as a data center, or why we as a data center community think it should be another tool. So it's really coming together with the entire sector, all the stakeholders, to discuss where to go from now.
And Garry, what do you think from an Irish perspective on that? There's a great community. You're leading a great community. Are people coming together to really focus on that?
Some days, and not other days, because we're effectively, and again, I can only speak for Ireland. We're laying out a plan for the next 10 years to decarbonise our society, to reduce carbon on the grid or increase the electricity from 43% annual to 80%. That's a lot of heavy lifting, 10 gigawatts offshore. So the grid has its challenges anyway to decarbonise society. I was really interested in what you were saying there, because it reminded me that this is only a 20-year-old industry, you know? And even people in the industry are only getting their heads around the growth. And we've never seen anything like this size and scale. You know, when the likes of Interaction, say, set up in Ireland, what were they, 2, 3, 4 megawatts? You know, that's a meet me room now. So, you know, the scale is just huge. And the other thing is, we are now very much in the middle of the 4th industrial revolution. Yeah? And it's recognized that it's the 4th industrial revolution. The first one had steam. The second one had electricity. The third one had microchips. The fourth one has data. So data is the steam of the first industrial revolution. That's how important it is. That's the language we should be talking to each other about. And the other thing that strikes me is we don't have, and maybe there's some here, the end users, like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, are they here today? Speaking openly?
No.
Okay. They don't come out to play. I call them Voldemort. They don't come out to play anywhere. So where you've got people hiding, people think they are hiding something. So they don't come out to events. They don't come out to data center events. They don't speak openly. They sort of, they're like that shadow, right? And if there's two groups that generally people don't like, politicians and successful big tech. Yeah? Because whilst the world is burning, they're all up in space rockets. So when you throw that into the mix as well, right? Amazon, Google, their data, they never see them. And yet, people are using their products all the time because it's AWS and Azure and Airbnb. So when we're talking about data centers, what I talk more about is Airbnb, Netflix, smart grid services. And people say, why are you talking about that? Because that's what a data center does. It manages all that. We need to show people the why and the speed by which this industrial revolution has just come upon us. It's just outrageous. You know, it's 15 years since it really took off.
And well, in Denmark, there's of course tremendous speed the last couple of years. Also, a lot of very big tech companies. But they still, the momentum is good. Is there? How is in Denmark? Are they viewing these big tech companies? Is there also on that a difference?
Well, it's still the broader public opinion is good, but we get journalists calling us where they try to catch us with a one phrase that they can put as a headliner. Yeah. So we're very careful when we speak to the media, because sometimes you are invited for an interview and they say, what's the aim of this interview? And then it's just because they want to throw us into the fire of a different story. So we try to be careful when we speak, but we also know that when we don't speak, that's also dangerous, because we need to speak from the industry and tell all the good stories and try to get it out. But there are definitely journalists around that want to make a bad story about these big hyperscalers. Yeah. But we have a lot of positive stories about the hyperscalers. It has supported with some extremely heavy investments. Now we have Facebook. They built already 3 phases in Odense. They bought 212 acres of land in Esbjerg. As we're speaking, they're building 23 kilometers of fence around this piece of land. Hopefully they will build a data center. You never know. Fence. What is it called?
No, just.
It's not a fan. It's a fence. Okay, something around.
No, if somebody's going to break into a data center, they're not going to drive into a truck.
But they're building that 23 kilometers. Yeah, but I'm just saying that's something that they are doing. So at least that's an indicator that they will do. They just sell the ground again. So we expect that there will be some there. We have Google, we have Apple. So they are there, and but we also had some cancellations where they bought and sold back the ground. But in general, it's quite positive still.
Natascha, is the sort of current situation with the high energy prices and the realization that we need to be sovereign, also due to the turmoil in the world, is that a chance for data centers to step up more, to help out maybe on certain areas?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's already happening. If you look at, I think it was in one of the data center policy of the North Holland mentions that with regard to innovation, that there's an entire chapter on innovation, for example, mentions that data centers nowadays should be part of the ecosystem of work development, development and innovation. I think that sums it up correctly, that would be the best way to be perceived, because then you're being part, indispensable, I think is the word in English, part of your environment. One of the aims is, of course, of our national government to have the coast of the Netherlands designated for hyperscale data centers. Why? Because it's easy to plug in from offshore wind, solar panels on the roof. There's a lot of positive things happening. I think, and I'm absolutely right, that should be more emphasized, because there's also a very positive message to bring forward.
We need the creativity that you see in Ireland now a little bit more to also interact on that.
I think it's time for some positive news in the Netherlands, in the data center.
In Ireland, for instance, Microsoft have been in Ireland since '83. They have 289 business units, and only one of them is a data center. Just one. So all the other business units.
Not one? No.
That was my joke. So data in Ireland, we're not going anywhere, because foreign direct investment is 150 billion is exported of software from Ireland. 8 billion is our agriculture. That gives you a sense of the importance of the data in the centres to the economy. But I also was very interested in what Natascha was saying. Society is going through an awful lot of changes, and when I think of the good news story, it's a great story about Amazon in Dublin, who have district heating, first actual commercial district heating system, servicing the municipality buildings and stuff. But society has to be ready to accept waste heat.
Yeah.
You can't just rock up and say, you have a waste heat. You have to have a community. You I think, have waste heat systems and district heating systems. It's taken hundreds of years to build, right? And it takes, we had nearly a change of government about 5 years ago because we were going to charge people for water. And you're going to now actually have a metered system for municipal heat. I didn't use as much as him, and I get, it takes a long time for all that. Yeah. But the easy one to blame at the moment is data centers. If it bleeds, it leads. The heading, that's what the editors want. So it gets dragged into everything. Yeah. It got dragged in today because Intel have just announced they're going to only spend 12 billion in Dublin. They're going to do the 80 billion in Germany. So data centers now are being, that's why Intel didn't do 80 billion in Ireland, because we're using all the electricity. Yeah. Even though Intel are the biggest electricity user in the country.
Any final remarks, or maybe a final question from you? A positive note towards the future? Constructive, positive note, maybe, Natascha?
Oh, wow, from a lawyer, constructive, positive note from a lawyer. Well, I think the only way is up, really. I mean, the government has put so many temporary measures in place for now, and there are a lot of insecurities. We have a new large legislation coming up 1st of January, combining 26 current laws. So how that's gonna turn out, we don't know. It will have an influence, but if I have to give one suggestion, keep the conversation open and the communication, frequent communication with the people who decide where the data center is going to be established and what's needed for permitting, because the timelines are the most important, your most important asset.
Thomas?
Yeah, I believe yesterday we were, Stijn gathered all the National Trade Association, somebody from the USDCA and somebody from Brussels. So I think that's very, very positive. That normally in an industry, you are very self-protective. Don't sell anything because you have to control your own market. In this case here, we're all going to be winners. So we have to win in the most sustainable and most clever way. So we sit together and discuss about opportunities, how to recommend, how to legislate. And when we do that across all these countries, we get some legislation, and this legislation is the same for everybody. So you don't compete on something, on the efficiency of a data center. That's a competitive point, but I mean that you compete equally if you create these things. And there are so many companies that are adding resources into this work, which is very positive. So I think the industry takes a big responsibility in having people that have a full-time job, allocate a part of that job to put an effort into this work. I think that's very positive. I think that is going to help the future development of the data centers.
Final story for you, Garry.
I think consistent messaging. You and I spoke about this 5 years ago. If I say that data centers based on the IEA use 2% of globe's electricity, let's agree, unless anybody else has a better statistic to that, that is hurting when other jurisdictions then use as a benefit to why you should go there. They say the world will use 22% of it is electricity. And that is that lonely statistic that the narrative will get built around. And that's why I like the work you do always, trying to bring us all together on a consistent message. You know, you have a blue version, you have a red version, I have a green version, but at least we have a version. The other thing to be really positive about, and always remember, is that we are pumping out now 12.5 times more data today than we did 10 years ago for the same electricity usage. So the efficiencies of that is just extraordinary. How it's not at 40%, it's because the kit, the servers, the air conditioning, all that good stuff that you guys build and design is getting better all the time. So we're doing 12.5 times. That's the IEA as well. They're the types of things you have to reinforce to people, because they think when you go for another 100 megawatts, you're actually just, because going down the road is so inefficient. You know, it's not the scale size. And then we've got this whole new refresh thing coming along. Any data center that's over 10 years maybe is ready to go again. So anyone in this room, it's a great industry. Great industry.
Well,
It's a brilliant industry, isn't it?
it's a great industry, and that's a couple
Nice
of
people too, some of them.
nice people too, and good parties.
Oh, good. Yeah, we're
Good
having
parties. So, thank you very much. Thank you, for panel, for seeing everybody again. I think we had a very good meeting yesterday with all the trade association in, and that's what we need. We need to collaboratively work on this big theme, but we will get there. It's a great industry.
Co-opetition.
Co-opetition. Thank you very much. Thank you.